Indiana basketball continues to hit the recruiting trail super, super hard, but not necessarily for the guys you think.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into this, the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen each and every day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, thank you so much for being here. Shout out to all of my everydayers for making this truly your first listen, your first watch every single day. I tell you all the time, this show is growing, and you are the reason for that. So thank you so much for being here, supporting the show, and making this your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics. Well, Indiana is on the recruiting trail. They're out there hitting it hard because we know right now is crunch time, right? We've told you that there are so many guys committing left and right. You see them every day. We know there's other dates coming up, and we know that Indiana, we're all kind of sitting on pins and needles right now, right? We're all sort of sitting around waiting to see who we're going to get. And I've told you that the effort of this staff is not going unnoticed. And the effort of this staff is really one that I have not seen here in quite some time. And I think the topic of today's conversation is going to prove that to you. If I were to ask you, hey, who has Indiana been recruiting lately? Based off of you watching this show or reading articles or talking with friends, like, who would you say that Indiana's been recruiting lately? Okay, Jalen Harrelson, Braylon Mullins, Trent Sisley, who's, of course, committed to Indiana, Eric Reeby, Michael Brown Jr., Darius Adams, those types of guys, right? Those are the names that you would say. Would you have said Winters Grady? Would you have said the four-star forward from Oregon? I wouldn't. I wouldn't have said that. I'll be honest with you, because if for my everydayers, you know, we haven't talked about this guy at all. And that's because Indiana was not in it with this guy at all. But all of a sudden, the Hoosiers said, hey, we want to be a part of this too. And they are. And now they're in the sweepstakes for Winters Grady. Let me tell you a little bit about this guy, right? Let me tell you a little bit about my best friend. I'm kidding. Winters Grady is a four-star forward, 6'5", 180 pounds, from California, played in Oregon. He's originally from Napa, California. He's in the 2025 class. He's a top 75 player. Okay, sounds pretty good. Why have we not heard about him? Well, he made a top 9, okay? He made a top 9 a while back, and here were his schools. This was back in August. New Mexico, Creighton, Colorado, USC, Iowa, Michigan, Oklahoma, Oregon, and Arizona State. Let me say those again. New Mexico, Colorado, USC, Creighton, Iowa, Arizona State, Oregon, Michigan, and Oklahoma. I guess he's been on a few visits to some of those places, but that was his top 9 back in August. I didn't say Indiana, did I? No, I didn't. And that's because we weren't really in this whole sweepstakes. We weren't really in this whole process until Mike Woodson and staff said, I think we want to be. I think we want to be a part of this. I think we want to do something different and go try and get this guy. And so that's exactly what Indiana has done. They called him up. They've started talking to the guy. They've started telling him what they're going to do. They've started telling him how he can fit into this new look offense that Indiana's supposedly going to be running. And man, I love this. I love this idea. They said, yeah, I know we haven't recruited you much, and I'm sure this is not the first time that they've talked, okay? I'm not trying to say that. But what I am saying is Indiana was nowhere near this guy's radar. I mean, wasn't even picking up anything. And all of a sudden, we picked up the phone and said, hey, we want to have a conversation. We'd like to talk to you. And that's exactly what they did. And for this kid, if you haven't watched any of his film, go watch it. He is a pure dynamic scorer. He's not going to blow you away with his quickness or athleticism or his bounce in the gym. But what he is going to show you is that he's a really good basketball player. He can shoot the ball effectively from inside, mid-range, three-point. It seems to me, just by watching him and reading up on him a little bit before doing the episode, that he's a mid-range guy. He loves to live in the mid-range. That's what I did growing up. That was my specialty. Just saying, even when I play pickup, mid-range, it's a killer. That's what this guy likes to do for Winters Grady is he likes to play in the mid-range. And he can shoot from outside. The shot changes a little bit, but it's nothing crazy. I still think he is an effective shooter from out there. But he's also 6'5", a buck what? Buck 85? Is that what I said? Yeah, buck 85. I mean, he is a big player. I think he can put on a little bit more. And the guy just flat out gets after it. So all things considered here, I think he's a really good player. And I think he's a great addition if Indiana can try and pull this off. And out of all those schools, out of all of these schools, we're the best one. We're the best basketball program by far. USC is rising with Musselman out there. Creighton's a good program. Iowa's a good program. Michigan's a good program, getting better. I mean, there are good teams in there. I mean, I think Indiana's got a real shot if we're stepping in here and saying, hey, we want a piece of this. We want to come in and be a part of your top 9, top 10, whatever the case may be. And I'm sure he'll trim that down as time goes on. But for a top 75 player, the 4-star, Indiana is going after this guy. And they're going after him so much that 247 actually asked him about it. And he has some quotes about Indiana. He says, quote, Indiana recently ramped it up a little bit. There could be a visit. They came in about 2 weeks ago and said they're transitioning more to a guard-oriented style of basketball. They've been dumping it in the post, seeing what happens from there, but they're transitioning to a guard style of play, and I think I fit that. So far, it's only been 2 weeks, but I've talked to them a good amount, and we'll see where it goes from here. I just need to get on campus. It's a basketball decision for me, so if they make sense and it's the right fit, then it's the right fit. Here we go again. Hoosiers fans, here we go again. Mike Woodson and this staff are telling everybody that they know. They're telling everybody that's willing to listen to them. They're grabbing a microphone. They're screaming it from the rooftops. We are changing the way we play basketball, and it's working. It's effective. It's impacting the way these kids think about Indiana, and this was crucial. It was crucial for so many different players, and for Winters Grady in particular, it may just be the difference maker to get him on campus, and then we know how that goes. You come to Indiana, you check out our campus, you check out our facilities, you check out our program, and we feel really good about getting a commitment from you. We're going to watch this one closely. Keep your eye on Winters Grady, the 4-star forward, plays like a guard, 6'5", 185 pounds from California. Indiana, they're surging right now. They're coming up fast around turn 3, and we'll see how they can see if they can lock this thing down with a 4-star forward in the 2025 class. Well, coming up here on Locked On Hoosiers, it's Big Ten Basketball Media Day. Mike Woodson taking a couple players to Big Ten Media Day. We'll see what they have to say. What do we expect them to say? And plus, I think it's telling on who he took with him. We'll talk about all of that coming up next on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So if you're like me and you get that hitch and the hunch or whatever you want to call it, that you've just got to bet on football, you've got to go check things out, you've got to go see what in the world is going on when Thursday night football happens, well, now you can do all of that in the FanDuel app. You can check on stats, you can do play-by-play, you can view the play-by-play, and so much more on the same page that you place your bets. And for Thursday night football, just pulled it up, you've got Bucks and Falcons. How about that? How about that game tonight? Bucks and Falcons. FanDuel has it right now at Falcons -2. I think I like that. I think I'll take that. I'm taking the Falcons -2 with our friends at FanDuel.com. And if you like that and you want to get started over there, if you bet just $5, they're going to give you $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place that first $5 bet. So go to FanDuel.com to get started. Jump in on Thursday night football and go to FanDuel.com. Welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers. Thank you so much for being here. Shout out my everydayers. You know who you are. I see you, I hear you, and I appreciate you. This show is so much fun right now. Coming up on a year that I've done this. Pretty crazy that we're coming up on that in just a few weeks. But I appreciate you making this your first listen each and every day. If you want to become an everydayer, or if you already are an everydayer and you're enjoying the content over here, be sure you do a few things for me. I'm going to ask you to do these things really, really quickly. Like the video. That way it gets out to the world. More people can find it. More people can see it. More people can be a part of this wonderful community. Comment down below your thoughts on Indiana going outside of what seemed to be the little bubble they were in of recruits that they were going after. They're going to find different guys, a guy like Winters Grady. Your thoughts on how they're doing that and whether it's going to work moving forward. And then the final thing I'm asking you to do right next to our Locked On Hoosiers logo, hit the subscribe button. That helps us out tremendously. It tells me that you're enjoying the content. It tells me that you want to hear more, you want to see more, and you want to be here more. So do those things for me really quick and help me. It supports this show that's free to you Monday through Friday. So keep that in mind, and I really do appreciate you and your support. Well, it's Big Ten basketball media day. All the Big Ten coaches will be in town. They all bring a few players with them. And the basketball one is a little bit different than the football style because they do some like interactive roundtables, which is really interesting, I think. And Mike Woodson's going to be a part of one. He's going to be at Big Ten Media Day. He will be there talking with all the media. A lot of it will be televised, not all of it, but you'll be able to catch videos, and there's, threads, and there's also people that are going to be there covering it, right? There's all sorts of good stuff that's going to be coming out of this. And one of the roundtables is Mike Woodson, Fred Hoiberg from Nebraska, and Eric Musselman from USC. Now, it doesn't say exactly what this is about, and I don't know if it's going to be topic-oriented or not, but I don't know. Could be interesting. So they don't really do that a whole lot at the football ones, right? I mean, you have your main podium, and you can have break-off sessions and stuff like that. But I don't know. Roundtable could be cool. Mike Woodson will do that. He'll speak sometime later this afternoon. It's saying 3:30, 4 o'clock. So we'll see what that ends up being in a podium. And then I think it's telling on who he took with him to Big Ten Media Day. There's a huge thing about this on the football side when this happens over the summer. And for basketball, I think it's a big deal too. I think it's telling on who you take to represent your program at a media day like this. He took Trey Galloway, super senior, guy that's been around a long time. I think that's smart. I think that's a great choice. Somebody who knows Indiana, loves Indiana, and has been in front of a microphone before. And he took Myles Rice. The transfer point guard. He's taken him to Big Ten Media Day as well. So what does that tell you, Hoosiers fans? What does that tell you about Myles Rice and the impact that he's already made on this team? What it tells me is he's making an impact farther than just on the floor. He's making a bigger impact than just what he has done in practice. Tells me that he is doing his job as a leader. He's being a point guard. He's being a guy that people can turn to. And Mike Woodson believes that he can be a good representation for Indiana on a day like this. I love that. I love it. And I'm excited to hear what they have to say, right? So many people get hyped up about these media days, and everybody's looking for the article to write, and they're looking for the quote to clip out and play for the end of time. Like, that stuff is dumb to me. I don't buy into all of that. I just don't. I'm looking to see, okay, do we get any updates? Do we get any insight on practices or the players or any injuries or how the locker room's been or even recruiting or maybe some NIL things and how things are happening around the university, around town, around the program? Like, you can, if you ask the right questions, you can get good answers and you can get good information. But it's the people that go into these events who are out to get you. I can't stand those people. And that's just where media is nowadays. And I hate that that's where it's at, but nothing I can do to change it. And so I am curious on what the questions are to Mike Woodson. Do they ask him right about a hot seat and surviving last year and not being let go and coming back to be the Indiana coach? Like, I'm sure there will be. I'm sure there will be. Again, people got to write articles. I get it. But I feel like there are bigger storylines here. I feel like you could talk about the fact that you still have a really, really good sophomore, Mackenzie Mbako, that you bring back Malik Renew, that you brought in the number one transfer portal class in the offseason, that you have some star-studded freshmen walking through the door, and recruiting is surging right now. You could talk about all of that with Mike Woodson, but they won't. They'll ask him dumb questions to try and get him, and they'll talk about his job and whether he feels the pressure to win and all of that stuff, and that's fine. It is what it is. But I do look forward to hearing him this afternoon and seeing just what he has to say, what they ask him, how he answers it. If he talks about this changing of the offense, I would love for somebody to ask that question. I hate that I can't be there because that's exactly what I would ask him. I'd say, Coach, you're telling all these recruits that you're going to change the offense. It's going to be a guard-heavy style, shooting out, outside in type of play. Is that going into effect right now? And if so, how is that working so far? And not only could you ask that to Mike Woodson, you can ask that to Myles Rice and Trey Galloway, the two guys that are going to be with him today because, funny enough, they're guards. And Myles Rice is a starter on this team. He's your starting point guard. And you could ask him about that. Just say, hey, how is this going? I know you weren't here last year, so you weren't able to be a part of the dump it inside game. Trey Galloway would be a really good guy to ask this question because if this is what Woodson is selling, if this is what Indiana is selling to recruits, heck, selling to us, the fans, I'm curious on how it's going. I'm curious on if it's going to start right now, if they're going to slowly kind of bleed it into this season, or if they're just saying, nope, we're going to wait till next year. We'll get our recruits and then we'll do it. I don't know. We're going to find out. I think the best idea is to probably bleed it in a little bit, start to work more of the guard play in, because you got to remember, you still do have Oumar Ballo and Malik Renew. You've still got really good players down low that you need to rely on and you need to use and take advantage of, right? So if Indiana can do those things, then yeah, you're in good shape. And then you have an opportunity to work in some of the extra guard play. I don't know if that's how it's going to work, but if I had the chance, that's what I would ask at Big Ten Media Day. I would ask Mike Woodson, I would ask Trey Galloway, and I would ask Myles Rice. I would ask them how that's going, what they expect that to do for this season and moving forward, because this storyline's fascinating, because every single recruit we hear from is, yeah, they're telling me they're changing the offense. They're going to formulate it around me. They're going to formulate it around the guards. And man, I'm fascinated by this. And I hope that they do. I hope that this all comes to fruition. But at the end of the day, we do have Big Ten Media Day. And so curious to see what Mike Woodson says, what Trey Galloway says, what Myles Rice says. And again, taking these two guys, super senior Trey Galloway and newcomer Myles Rice, I think that's very, very telling about what they're going to bring to this program this season. Well, coming up on our final segment on Locked On Hoosiers, we'll stay on the conference conversation because SEC and Big Ten locking arms again. College football playoff. Is it SEC Big Ten heavy? We'll talk about that coming up on our final segment on Locked On Hoosiers. Final segment here on Locked On Hoosiers. Appreciate you being here again. Shout out to all of my everydayers. And for you making this your first listen, your first watch every single day, I appreciate that, and making this your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics. Just want to remind you, we're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. This show is free to you every single day. And speaking of Locked On, look at this sweet shirt that they sent me, man. Isn't this awesome? Look at that. It's the Locked On logo. I know it's Oregon colors. We'll have to get on Spencer McLaughlin about it later, but sweet shirt. They've been sending me all sorts of swag. And so a shout out to them, man. They got a great thing going, and all of our shows are just rolling right now. And if you're looking for some more content from the Locked On Podcast Network, you can check out a couple of shows. I mentioned Spencer McLaughlin. He does the Locked On College Football Show. Go check him out. Tell him that Jacob from Hoosiers sent you, and that if we played Oregon this year, we would beat them. All right, tell him that. And then go check out Locked On College Basketball. That's with Isaac and Andy. They do a phenomenal job covering all the biggest storylines in college basketball. My guess is they'll be covering a lot of these different media days. So go check them out at Locked On College Basketball. Well, the SEC and the Big Ten are linking and locking or whatever, intertwining arms once again. And this time it's on the football side of things. Did you see this story this week about how the SEC and the Big Ten they're meeting. They're going to have some legitimate meetings. And part of their discussion is for the college football playoff. And we know that it's through next year, that then the contract is up, right? There's 2026 is a massive question mark for college football in the playoff system. We don't know if it's going to be 12. We don't know if it's going to be 14. Heck, it could be 64 for all we know. We don't know. But what we do know is that the SEC and the Big Ten, if it's a 12 or 14 team playoff, each conference wants at least 4. They want 4 guaranteed teams to be in the college football playoff. Now, initially, you think, okay, that's insane. That's ridiculous. How could they get 8 of the 12 or 8 of the 14 teams in the college football playoff guaranteed? That's not fair. But then you take a step back. You take a step back and you start thinking about it. It's like, okay, let's think about the Big Ten and the SEC for a second. Let's take, on any given year, let's take our best 4 from the Big Ten and their best 4 from the SEC and put it up against any other top 4 from any other conference in college football. You're telling me that more times than not, we're not going to win those games? The Big Ten would roll. The SEC would roll. Look at the SEC right now. It's the best conference in college football. Texas, Bama, Georgia. I'm good. No, I'm good. And they've still got Ole Miss over there, Tennessee over there, Missouri over there. Nah, I'm good. Over here in the Big Ten, Ohio State, you still have Oregon, Indiana. I'm just saying. And you also, historically, right, you have Michigan, who just won the national championship. Like, the top 4 of each of these conferences is just leaps and bounds better than any other top 4 that any other conference can offer. And so it sounds crazy, but I don't think it is. I don't think the SEC and the Big Ten demanding that are going to be all that great. Now, other conferences and other fans are going to lose their minds. Whatever the Pac-12 is doing, they're going to be upset. The Big 12, they're going to be upset. The ACC, they'll be upset, but they have no room to talk. That conference is terrible. So it's not going to come without pushback. There's no doubt about it. But this is just another step in the direction that I've talked about for the day that's coming. I've talked about this for a long time. If you're a real everyday around here, you'll know I talked about this very in the beginning of when I took this show over. I believe that there's a day coming where conferences like the SEC, the Big Ten, if they loop in the Big 12 and the ACC, we'll see. But I think that these conferences and the powers that be are going to come together and they're going to walk into the front office of the NCAA and they're going to tell them to kick rocks. And they're going to say something else, but I can't say that on a podcast. They're going to walk in and say, we're done. We don't want to be with you anymore. This relationship is over. It's not benefiting us. In fact, it's hurting us. And we don't want to be in it anymore. We're walking away. And they're going to take the best teams from all of those conferences, and they're going to make one big super conference. And they're going to do their own thing. They're going to run their own organization. They're going to have their own sector of college football. Now, how does that work for all the other sports? I don't quite know. But I believe that this day is coming. And I think this meeting that the SEC and Big Ten are having to talk about the playoff and other things around college athletics, it's just another step in that direction. Because the more times that these people get in the same room, and I really admire Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner. I think he does a phenomenal job there. The more times that these folks get in a room and they start talking about how this could be a really fun idea and how the NCAA sucks, the more times they do that, eventually they're going to say, man, what are we doing? Why are we still here? Why are we still in this toxic relationship? Let's dump her. Let's get out of here. Let's go and do our own thing. Let's go where the grass is greener. And I think that day is coming. And I think this is a step towards that. We'll see how this goes. It's the SEC Big Ten. They're meeting to talk about a bunch of different things. But the one that everybody ran with this week was they're planning on demanding 4 teams guaranteed each season in the college football playoff. How does that impact Indiana as we wrap it up? Well, historically, it doesn't. It doesn't. In the college football playoff era, the last decade, it hasn't really impacted us. But it will now. Think about this year. Think about right now. We're halfway through, right? Almost halfway through the college football season. And Indiana's undefeated, going for 6-0 this weekend against Northwestern when they hit a bye week. Yes, the schedule gets tougher, but you're telling me by the end of this year, we won't be a top 4 team in the Big Ten? We are right now. So all we have to do is finish the season the same way. And then we would be in a playoff scenario if the Big Ten were to get its way. Heck, we're in a playoff scenario right now if we finish out the way that we've been playing. I'm just saying, if Curt Cignetti continues to do the things that he's doing and changing the direction of this program, this conversation could start to impact Indiana. More importantly, it could start to include Indiana. And I think we need to keep an eye on that as the Big Ten and the SEC, they continue to do some things behind closed doors. And I'm telling you, it's going to be good for the sport of college football. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Thank you again for being here. I appreciate you, man. We're having so much fun on this show, and I hope that you are as well. For all my audio listeners, my YouTube watchers, thank you all so much. YouTube, be sure you like the video, comment down below. If the SEC and the Big Ten were to split off and do their own thing, who would they bring with them? What teams would survive? Would they get other conferences to come with them? Let's get that discussion going down in the YouTube comments. I'll jump in on that. Don't you worry. And then be sure before you go, subscribe to the channel. It's the little subscribe, looks like a little pill almost, a little oval just to the right of our Locked On Hoosiers logo. Click on that for me. Tells me that you like the content and you become an everydayer, okay? We're back tomorrow for the Friday edition of the show. We're doing previews for Indiana Northwestern, more basketball news because I'm sure there will be some, and whatever else we want to get to as we wrap up the week. That's coming up on tomorrow's show. So until then, Hoosier fans, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.